Hey, what is going on, guys? It's Johnny and welcome to another Pokemon Unite video. In today's video, we're going to be discussing about the top 5 Pokemon that can Hyper Carry in solo queue. If you're trying to climb the ranks, consider these Pokemon from the list based on what your team comp is lacking for a higher chance in winning. We'll be discussing about what makes these Pokemon very overpowered and why they have the best chances in carrying. Before we do jump into it, guys, if you do like the video, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. This will greatly help our channel to grow and help with the YouTube algorithm and recommend the video to other viewers. Now, without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Soaring in at number 5, we have the Fiery Bird Talonflame. Talonflame is a very strong Pokemon that does a bunch of damage throughout the game. He is best in the jungle because of his fast clear time in early evolution. At level 5, he will evolve into his first evolution and get access to a new ability, giving him a pretty decent power spike right before Bees. But what's great about Talonflame is when he hits level 7, because this is when the real power spike comes in. Getting level 7 before the first Dreadnought fight is very possible and a must because of the amount of damage you will deal. At level 7, Talonflame will evolve into his final evolution and have access to Fly. Fly is hands down one of the best abilities when securing or stealing objectives, because when this ability is used, Talonflame, as the name suggested, will fly into the sky and become untargetable. After 3 seconds, he will descend back down and deal immense damage to targets within the AoE. You can choose to land a little earlier by hitting the ability again, making it more controllable. Fly is a full package ability because he gives you everything that you could ask for. Untargetable, good mobility, high burst damage, AoE damage. If you're facing an opponent that isn't very mobile or have any dashes, or if the eject button is on cooldown, there's almost nothing the opponent can do if they miss position, because just to Fly alone will shred them before Talonflame even receives any damage. Just the ability to almost one-shot an opponent while being immune to damage is insane. Not to mention, Talonflame's Unite, which is unlocked at level 9, is the best displacement to push opponents back. This will help your team with securing objectives or even pushing Rotom into the enemy goal. Talonflame is on the squishiest side of things, so you'll have to be careful about big team fights. But if timed correctly with Fly, most damage will be avoided and you get to control when to engage with your team. He can control team fights with his Unite and potentially one-shot a target on the enemy team. This is what makes Talonflame so scary. If you spot an opponent on the enemy team that's a threat, then you can single them out. Pick your targets right and focus on the opposing team's carry to increase your chances of winning. Dashing in at number 4, we have Lucario. With Lucario, this should not come as a surprise since he is arguably the best Pokemon in the game. He has the flexibility to either jungle or lane, but I preferably like to lane with him. Reason being is because his laning phase is so dominant that you could allow one of your own teammates to take jungle. This will allow your jungler, like maybe say a Talonflame, to impact the map while you hold your own lane, or maybe even potentially dominate it because he's that good. Lucario is so strong in the laning phase because of his abilities, Quick Attack and Meteor Mash. Both abilities do good damage and can even be used to outplay your opponents. When facing an opponent that doesn't react in time, players can Quick Attack behind the target and Meteor Mash them back towards the team. This will force the opponent to either retreat or perish. He also becomes tankier with his passive ability, Steadfast, which gives him a shield and more movement speed when his HP is low. Lucario's power spike comes in at level 5 because you get either power up punch or extreme speed. Now, both abilities are very good. Personally, I like going with power up punch versus a team of heavy attackers because power up punch struggles a bit versus tanks. But versus a team of squishies or someone that is mispositioned, Power Up Punch will punish them because it will chunk a large portion of their HP. It can also chain into Bone Rush, which is unlocked at level 7, and can provide CC. Getting objectives is the name of the game, and Power Up Punch gives you more options to do so because of its high single target damage. Though, it is pretty limited because experienced players can block you. Versus a team with more frontline and tanks, I prefer going with Extreme Speed. Extreme Speed is generally the harder build because it's very reliant on you getting multiple resets. But if mastered, this build is near impossible to stop Lucario. The amount of mobility he gains is ridiculous and becomes very slippery, making it a great ability for team fights. Early game is very important because it lets you control the pace of the game and first Dreadnought. In a competitive scene, you will always find a Lucario on both teams. This speaks volume on how important this Pokemon is. And if you don't, then the team without one will probably lose. Whether you go with Power Up Punch or Extreme Speed, Lucario will still have good mobility, damage, and tankiness. A true all-rounder and the best Pokemon for the laning phase. This will transition you and your team to the late game with early advantages. Rushing in at number 3, we have Venusaur. Like Lucario, Venusaur can either lane or jungle, but he can be a double-edged sword if he falls behind. His kit is pretty well-rounded and his range attacks give him a decent laning phase while still dealing good damage. Ideally, you want to hit level 9 to get your final evolution as soon as possible. Prioritize experience because once he gets his final evolution with Petal Dance and Giga Drain, this Pokemon becomes a real hindrance to deal with. Even Pokemon mentioned on this list has a very hard time dealing with him, but you'll need to maintain the level advantage so the opponent doesn't have enough raw stats to defeat you. As an attacker, Venusaur does good damage while still sustaining himself with Giga Drain. When used, Venusaur will damage opponents and heal himself while taking reduced damage. The healing will further increase at level 11, making him that much harder to defeat. Though he doesn't have insane burst, his consistent damage output and sustain is what makes this Pokemon unstoppable. Petal Dance will deal AoE damage over time around Venusaur, but also provides him with a movement speed increase. Rotation is very important in this game because you want to show up at the right place at the right time. With Petal Dance, you'll have no issues moving around the map, especially since the cooldown isn't even that long. The passive ability, Overgrow, will further increase his damage when his HP is low. Pair this up with shields and you'll find yourself dealing lots of damage while your HP bounces back and forth. If Venusaur can maintain the levels and experience with the Giga Drain build, he changes from an attacker to an all-rounder. He'll become unkillable in teamfights and can also single-handedly run over the enemy team, making him snowball out of control. Stealthing in at number 2, we have Greninja. When it comes to Power Spike, Greninja is very similar to Talonflame. At level 5 and 7 are his second and final evolutions, making him a great jungler for early game power and control around the first Dreadnought. He scales very well throughout the game and gets stronger as the game progresses. Both builds between Water Shuriken and Surf are very viable, and honestly, in some situations, one build could be better than the other, but you'll find that most situations will favor Water Shurikens because this ability is just so consistent. With only a 5-second cooldown, Water Shuriken will shred through opponents and objectives while healing him. Greninja plays as a range and melee attacker. At a distance, basic attacks will reduce Surf, Water Shuriken, and Bubble's cooldown, and boosted attacks will slow targets with increased damage. However, in melee range, basic attacks will instead deal bonus damage based on the opposing Pokemon's remaining HP. This makes it so Greninja can act as an executioner, executing anybody that's on low HP. For mobility, Greninja has great options as well between Double Team and Smokescreen. The cool thing about Double Team is that the Water Clones can attack with Water Shuriken, making him deal more damage while repositioning. The ability is also great for juking and confusing opponent. Anybody that shows up late to a team fight without watching the battle may end up attacking the wrong target, wasting important abilities. Smokescreen is generally used with Surf to stay out of sight and reposition for resets. But the issue with Surf that players might find is that it's very inconsistent because of buddy barriers and shields throughout the game. Because of his high attacking capabilities and can provide consistent damage throughout the game, Greninja will be able to assassinate anybody, especially since his melee range serves as an execute option. He has good mobility with Double Team and Smokescreen that allows him to reposition while still dishing out lots of damage, making him a strong threat. Now finally, flashing in at number 1, we have Zeraora. Pokemon that doesn't require any evolutions like Lucario and Zeraora generally have higher base stats. This makes them a very strong duelist because you can take any trade with anybody and come out on top. Despite his high base stats and ability to lane though, for this Pokemon I would recommend the jungle because he still has his own power spikes that he should reach. And trust me, you'll want to reach this power spike before the first Dreadnought. At level 6, you'll gain access to Volt Switch or Spark. Both abilities serve as a good option for mobility, but Volt Switch is the safer option because it allows you to juke opponents and reposition. The real fun begins at level 8 though, because you'll have access to the best ability in the game, Discharge. This ability provides Zeraora with immense AoE damage that damages anybody within the electric current. The damage output from this ability is no joke and even provides some sustain and CC. So you mean this ability provides high AoE damage, sustain, and CC? Correct! Zero Aura is squishy, as he should be since he's a speedster. However, Discharge will provide him with a shield when the ability hits a target. The ability will also pull in targets towards him when it ends, stunning them and bringing them closer to Zero Aura to finish the job. To further increase his sustain, every third attack will also restore Zero Aura's HP while dealing increased damage and stunning the targets. This is absolutely insane. Both his boosted attack and Discharge has high damage, sustain with heals and shields, and even CC. What more could you want in a passive and ability? When it comes to dueling anybody throughout different stages of the game, Zero Aura is the best when it comes to level 1 through 15. With Lucario, you might have some issues versus tanks, but with Zera, he is able to provide high consistent damage due to Discharge. Add his auto attacks into the mix and you have yourself a Pokemon that can duel anyone while still sustaining himself. What's even crazier is that on top of his consistent damage, he also has a Unite that bursts like crazy. His Unite is very strong and will also knock up enemies. In addition, once it connects to the initial target, it will create an electric field that will buff Zero Aura's attack range and damage when inside. When it comes to damage, Zero Aura will supply because Discharge is an insane ability that hasn't been nerfed yet. The ability to zone out opponents and push them back while volt switching back to safety is incredible and gives you many options on how to approach a team fight. If your opponent foolishly fights you inside Discharge, then they have a one-way trip back to the fountain. And there you have it, guys. These are my top 5 Pokemon to hyper carry in solo queue. When it comes to carrying your team, you'll need Pokemon with the ability to outplay opponents and deal lots of damage. This will help you win team fights and zone enemies off of objectives. It's important to note that there are other Pokemon that are very good in the game, like Eldegoss, and this isn't to belittle them by any means. The issue with Eldegoss is that you'll mainly have to rely on your team to deal the damage. Therefore, the Pokemon on this list can fulfill in that carry role. If you have a couple attackers, then someone like a Lucario that can have a strong early game and a decent frontline might be more suitable. If your team has a couple tanks, then someone like a Greninja or Zero Aura with large damage output might be more suitable. It is up to you to look at your team and see which Pokemon will fit better with your team comp. Let me know which Pokemon you guys generally like to use to hyper carry your games, and why that Pokemon specifically. I'm very interested to hear about your reasoning, so please do tell me in the comment section below. Alrighty guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to smash that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to also turn on that notification bell so you don't miss on any newly released videos. I've been Johnny D, and until next time, I'll catch you guys in the next one.